Welcome to Unshakeable with Human Design, the show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs use human design to shift from hustle to flow without sacrificing results. Come here to become an unshakable human and build an unshakable business according to your human design. I'm your host, Nicole Laino. Hello and welcome to Unshakeable with Human Design, everybody. I'm your host, Nicole Laino, and I'm here for another transit episode for the month of June with my friend, my partner in these episodes, Miss Christina Luna. How are you today, Christina?
I'm feeling so good right now. This is a good phase for me.
I'm very happy to hear that. We were chatting a little bit before we went live, and I was sharing how I'm feeling a little like part of me wants to move, but another part of me is saying, we're not doing that right now. And I've been grappling with this feeling. I've committed to things. I have things on the agenda. I have things in the plan. And my body and my intuition is telling me, don't do that. And I do have to walk the walk. So I'm sort of figuring out and sitting with things to see how do I go forward where I feel like I'm still in integrity with who I am and what I put out there, but also being true to myself. And then we started talking about some of the things that we're seeing in the month of June coming. And at least from the human design perspective, as I was going through preparing for the episode, I was like, oh, I'm seeing this push-pull. Honestly, May felt really good to me. I got a lot done, which that definitely feels good to me. I like to get a lot done. I'm a productive person. And that felt really awesome. And now I'm learning something and watching myself where it's like, oh, the discomfort in the slowing down. I'm actually okay slowing down. It's the plan that I have in place. My mind telling me I should be doing something else, that I should be pushing harder. Here's what you have in the plan. This is the date. You're supposed to be doing this or you'll be off your schedule. And I've had to grapple with that feeling. And as I was looking at this month coming up, I was like, oh, I feel like that's actually going to be a big lesson of June, is knowing how to ride that wave of surrender. So how are you feeling about that?
Yeah. So the thing that is interesting, whenever we look at the different planets, the planets all represent a different part of ourselves. And while every single person has every single planet at play in their lives, some people have recipes where they really favor the planet of action, or they really favor the planet of movement, or they really favor the planet of intellect, or maybe receptivity. And so every person has this different recipe. And I was sharing that right now, Mars is still in Aries, and Mars is still wanting to go and move, and let's make those changes. But some of the other planets have moved into this other space of changing plans. Like, oh, this is different now. Our preference changed for this. Our plan changed for this. We've got to actually wait for this to happen. And the timing of this is different. So if we are favoring security or favoring movement or favoring progress, there could be a part of us that's feeling a little frustrated because we've set something in motion and we want it just to keep going from point A to point B without a lot of inefficient diversion. But the planets of Venus and Mercury and Jupiter are now in the place of, let's move this way. Oh, let's quickly change the plan. Oh, we got to wait for that now. New information has come in. We got to make a new plan with new information. And so we can't really forge forward until we flush all the new information forward. And so it's a time where you can have everything that you desire. You just have to work with all the parts, not just the ones you favor.
Yeah. And I hope that everybody who listens to these episodes with us, that they're starting to observe how they interact with the energy out there, that it isn't just all reality. It's the way that we're perceiving and the way that we're interacting with the energy. And for me, it's been interesting to be aware of how my mind wants certain things, my energy wants certain things. So I very well may have what you were talking about, like strong Mars energy. And I look at the chart a little bit differently. I have powerful doing energy in my chart and in my Mars. So I know that about myself. And hearing you talk about it, seeing how I interact with it intuitively, I know that there's gathering happening, that there's an integration happening. Things are happening in the background, but my front and center 3D self is like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I mean, in an achievement oriented business, especially, where we're just like, if I slow down, then everything will slow down, then I'll fail. And just being aware of that
Mm-hmm.
and being conscious of the fact that that's there without trying to fix it, without trying to make it work to what I think it should be.
That's right. And it's so interesting that you said what you think it should be, because we end May and we begin June with a week that's considered the 10 of Swords. And 10 moments are always the culmination, the ending. This is the last phase of maturation of this mode of being. And so the air or the swords rule all of the beliefs that we had set and stacked up for ourselves up to this point. And then once a year, we have this moment where we get to actually create an ending to all of those beliefs and start a new cycle of being wrong about what we used to believe, but being a little more right about something that's more universally true. And Gemini is the opposite of Sagittarius. So we're in a season now where we're in the space of opinion, ideas, personal beliefs, and preferences. And every single person has very different versions of those things. And they're not universal. By nature, they're not meant to be universal. And so this is a time where we could be very curious, open, communicative, and no one really is in a phase of having access to the full universal truth. There's not a universal truth available to us right now. All there are a lot of stories, beliefs, experiences, and opinions that are all trying to create a new reality together. And so it's interesting, especially if you look at what's happening on the world platform right
Yeah.
now.
And that kind of beautifully leads into where we start the month in at least the human design wheel is in gate 35. And gate 35 is called the gate of progress. And it's in the throat center. We're running through the whole throat center, which is all about action and manifestation and communication. It's where we bring things into form. And the 35th gate of progress hates boredom. It hates sitting still. It really does get antsy. And there's several gates this month that are coming that hate being still, but need to be still. But gate 35 is the end of the experiential process. So there's a whole experiential process circuitry in all the channels of the experiential way is the emotional path to life, not logical, the emotional path. So taking all of the experiences and everything that we've done and everything that we've seen and everything we have taken into our world through all of our senses, everything that we have sensed. And this is the last piece of it that says, okay, we've done it all and now progress. And now we move forward. It wants to take everything that we've known and it wants to package it up and go, now here's what we're doing. And I think the lesson of gate 35 is that when we act prematurely before really gathering it all, when we just jump into the next experience without the pause, without really taking it all in and letting it settle, and then moving with some purpose and saying, okay, clarity, I don't need to know where I'm going, but I know that I feel good about going, is really the lesson of this one. It's not logical at all. It's the least logical probably of every gate that we have. It's just saying, I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm supposed to move now. And I get that this is how we're moving. And that's all I need to know.
This is so great. This morning, I had an interaction with a really close friend, and I had posted a quote from Rick Rubin that said, if you step away from a work for a long period, you'll be different when you return to it. And she responded, this is perfect. This is my last week of really giving space to my work. And I've taken an entire month off, and now I can see that I feel ready. And I responded to her with, I'm actually starting again in the first week of June as well. And I have no idea what it's going to look like, but the feeling of readiness to start again is there. And we were just talking about how there's something so satisfying about feeling ready and not pressing into action before feeling ready. That giving space to ourselves to not act compulsively because we are uncomfortable with inactivity that lends this energy that builds and builds, that is available to us when the time is right to go and move forward.
Absolutely. And I think that readiness, though, comes from that pause, from the stepping away, from not going all the time because you're not ready. And that's the message that I've been getting, is that we're not ready. And it's not that you need to do something to get ready. Maybe you need to do nothing to get ready. Maybe you need to pull away to be ready. And I did an interview that'll air in the coming weeks on feminine leadership. And I feel like that is a theme with that, of being able to step away and come at something from a different perspective. Maybe the inaction is actually leading you to the action. And that's counterintuitive to the way that we're brought up, what we're taught to value, especially when we're dealing in the entrepreneurial space where you eat what you kill. So that feeling of, if I'm not feasting, it's a famine. If I'm not working, if I'm not going, if I'm not progressing, then I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to pay my bills. And scary.
There's a dangerous statement in personal growth that is, if you're not growing, you're dying. And while that might be true, there's also nothing wrong with dying. What if we valued the death part of a cycle, because that's what created the extra space for the growth? And it does feel that part of what we're talking about is letting some of that productivity in some ways recess so that we can build up those resources and take action when the energy is right for it.
And I think that what you just touched on there, I want to go into a little bit deeper, the dying, because someone might misinterpret that, because it can feel so ugly. And I love that you're bringing this, that it's a natural part of the cycle and it isn't the finality of death. There's another term in the spiritual space, ego death, that a part of me had to die in order for the new part of me to be born again, to rise differently. And I absolutely go through big phases of this. And every time you get a little bit better at recognizing it and seeing it, but your mind still kicks in, your ego still kicks in and says, if we don't go, if we don't grow, we'll die. And maybe we have to. Maybe that part of us does need to go. Maybe there does need to be a turning inward. Maybe there needs to be a slowing down. We need to burn in order to rise from the ashes. But it doesn't have to be destructive.
Even our bias against destruction can be reevaluated right now. I'm in the process of a massive move, and I had to completely dismantle my previous beautiful life in order to create this entirely new manifestation of every aspect of my life. It's such a better fit for every part of my life, but that would never have been able to take place if I didn't go through a massive destruction. And I'm also destroying a lot of my own attachments to living alone, living separately from my partner, having my family in two separate places. There's a lot of thought paradigms that I'm allowing be destroyed during this process. And I feel that as we move into a new era, there's going to be this acceptance of things that we've previously considered less desirable. Death, destruction, chaos, dismantling, decay, all of these, they're actually more elementally feminine. The elemental feminine principle is one of yin, of rest, of the nothing, of the receptive nothing that all springs from. It's the dark, fertile soil that every bit of life emerges from, but all of the death has to nourish that soil. And so now we are getting the first bright sprigs of growth in Gemini. We get to see some of that new growth after a long ending death cycle.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, what are you seeing coming for the rest of this month, June as a whole? What are your thoughts on it when you were looking at the astrology? How are you feeling about this based on what you're going through and just in general?
The very first week of June, we're going to be facing a lot of movement. All of a sudden, that readiness is going to kick in. We're going to take action quickly. As soon as the green light turns, go ahead and go. if you get an invitation, if you receive an opening, if the date feels right, if the correspondence between the person you're creating it says yes, just say yes and go for it. And I think that's going to move us to a new place by the second week where we've got to reconcile some of those choices, and we're going to face some hard squares between the 9th and the 15th. There's going to be some squaring off energy where we're going to have to acknowledge that there's these two sort of oppositional ideas in our system, and we're going to need to hold both ideas without necessarily killing either one of them. And that's how growth happens. If you can hold happiness and sadness at the same time, you could create a new emotion from it. And I think that that second week is going to invite a lot of things that we're going to feel tempted to want to say, this stays, this goes, this lives, this dies. And I think what we're going to grow is a new concept where both of these cowboys get to live in the same town together. And that's going to bring us to a new level of maturity, a maturity of our consciousness, where by the third week of June, we acknowledge how much we've actually grown because we're not having to choose between one thing or the other. We're actually getting to mold them into something wholly that's never been in existence before, which then gives way to the very last week of June, which will allow our new reality to really sink in emotionally. So I feel there's this swell of growth, this swell of something new that gives way by the last week to a whole new feeling perceptive state.
Yeah, I feel a lot of that. I'm seeing a lot of the same thing. And I think coming from the human design perspective, how that layers on with this is that second week, to me, it's in gate 45, which is about leadership. It does want to take a stand. It wants to say, follow me. I'm going this way. And it wants to know. We call it king, queen energy. It is the top of the food chain as far as telling everybody this is the way. It is the CEO. It is the president. It is that person at the top of the hierarchy that says, this is what everybody needs to know. This is what everybody needs to do. It's directing things. It's the conductor. But it doesn't necessarily always know. The knowing comes from taking a lot in and not necessarily acting on it. But the queen is not acting. The queen is sitting, taking in the information from her advisors and discerning it, which is the following week, which is about discernment. It's the gate of caution, which is really caution in the sense of, I know when to speak and it's appropriate. I know when to act and it's appropriate. I'm not going. And I think it's taking in all of this stuff that was taken in that second week. In that third week, we're saying, now let's figure out what's here. What does need to be said? What does need to be acted on? And like you were saying, when you know you're ready, go. And then we go into gate 15, which is the gate of magnetism, which really does magnetize people and magnetize opportunities and magnetize things without trying. It is not a doing gate. It is a being gate. It is in the G center. It is about being in love with who you are for all the things that you are, in love with everybody for being everything that they are, and allowing yourself to be a magnet and allowing your energy to do the work. And the same thing in that last week, which is the gate of stillness. It's the mountain. It is about finding strength in the stillness. June felt to me like a gathering time. It is a time of, we've taken a lot in. Now we're going to sift through it all. And then we're going to be, not do. And then we're going to sit in the stillness some more. And that might be really uncomfortable. I think gate 52, that last week, is one of the more uncomfortable gates because it sits in a pressure center. It sits in the root. And there is all this pressure that wants to evolve, that wants to change, but it's part of the channel of concentration, which is about focus. And we can't focus without stillness. You can't focus when you're restless. And it's preparing you for something. It's preparing you for that burst of energy that's going to come. And when you are still, you are actually able to see something through and check all the boxes, get all the details. Don't miss the things that you would have missed if you prematurely went or if you succumbed to pressure, which ends up with scattered energy.
That's why I love these episodes so much. I didn't use these words when I did my little description for the weeks of June, but the first week would be considered the Knight of Swords, the Knight of Air, like this way, this way, this way. The second week, the Queen week that you were talking about, is the Queen
Yeah.
of Air. And you're right, she listens to her counsel. She's holding different perspectives and making the divine decision for her life from all of this information she's taken in. And then the third week is the King. And the King is essentially when we have all the information, we take it in, and then we decide to move from the place of wisdom. The Queen is the internal processing. The King is the external processing of all the information that we've gathered, that we've taken in, that we've assimilated, that we've integrated, so we can act from a maturity of that spot. And then the last week that you talked about, the Ace of Cups. And always I think of the Ace of Cups like people scry by looking at water, like bowls of water. And as you peer at the water, you're able to understand things about the way you feel, about your state. You're able to understand things that the water is teaching you. And it is a time to understand that we can drink this water in, we can receive this water. And we go into a time of cardinal water, which is an initiating from the still place, initiating from the receptive place, or from the emotional place where life has finally sunk in, and now we feel what life is really about. I love that we are looking at this beautiful, moving, central consciousness. And each of us have this different perspective and vantage point that we're looking at the exact same beautiful jewel. And we're just turning the jewel and describing the jewel from our different language sets or our different wisdom sets. And that's why these episodes feel so exciting to me, because it's so deeply validating. We're using all these words, we're using these models, but ultimately we're looking at this jewel and just trying to capture tiny little bits of it with our words.
And guys, we don't talk about this before we come on. We have like a couple of minutes that we chit chat before we hit record, but we come to this with our own work, and we do often end up on at least very close to the same page, where we might be looking at it through a slightly different lens, but we are ending up at the same spot. And these episodes help me a lot because it gets me tuned into this all the time, not from a place, and we've talked about this before, of trying to fix it, but the more we become the observer of ourselves and the way that we interact with this program that we're all under, with the codes that are happening, and that's what we're giving you guys here. We're giving you the codes of what's going on. Now, how you interact with that, like Christina, you were saying at the beginning of the episode, if you have a strong Mars, then this might not feel good for you because it wants to move. But if you have a really strong Venus, then this might feel like exactly your vibe. And this is why how I'm reacting to something or interacting with it may be very different from the person listening to this. But I hope that everybody is becoming more aware of your interaction with what's happening. Can you just observe it without trying to fix it, make it fit into a box or fit into an agenda, and just see what happens? Because I'm always pleasantly surprised. I'm not going to say that it's always comfortable, because it very often is not. It's very often uncomfortable for me to sit back and learn how to maneuver and ride these waves that we're on. But I always come out of it with a greater understanding of myself. Things always turn out better than I thought they would. And I hang on to my own vision. I don't let what happens or the way that I feel mess with the intention that I have for myself or make me feel like it is less likely because something is happening right now. And if I catch myself in that, if I see myself do, like I did that just this weekend, I was overwhelmed, tired, and thinking about all the things I had to do. And then I was like, oh, it's starting to mess with my vision. It doesn't have to be that way. I get to sit here and have the same vision and say how it comes to fruition is different than I had planned. And that's okay. And it can still be just as good as I ever wanted it or better. So I love these episodes because they're very fun for me. They're different than anything else I do on the show. And I hope that we're preparing everybody. We're just teaching them how to recognize what's happening and how beautiful this is, that this little journey, this is the game, guys. As we're playing the more energetic game in our lives, as we're being called to right now, as things are changing, this is, I think, an essential piece of it. Learning to observe versus react.
Speaking of observing, there are some really specific dates this month that
Sure.
I would love to
Yes.
highlight so that we could sort of circle them and have an extra layer of consciousness around the way that we're giving ourselves permission to observe that day.
1,000%. Give them to us.
Okay, so first of all, I think the first big one, we're going to be building up to a really beautiful, beautiful experience on the
Okay.
4th. So this is very soon. This is the first one. The 4th, we're going to have the sun and Venus together. First of all, that's already a beautiful day. That's when Venus crosses over the sun. She's reborn. We get this new version of the feminine principle born on this day. And it's happening on the same day that Mercury and Jupiter are coming into a conjunction, and they're both in a harmonious trine to Pluto. So what this all means is this is a day where we will become very conscious and receptive to a new vision for our long future. We're going to get a download or a glimpse of some kind of long-term vision that we want to see and receive and bring to fruition over the next 20 years. And it will require some change. We will perceive that there's a gap, but it could be just kind of a grandiose idea that's way beyond what our current experience is. But giving ourselves permission to really allow that to come in and land, get it down on paper, let yourself explore it, have conversations about it. Surround yourself with people that think about the future and how it could be so much better. It's a good day for problem solving. It's a good day for feeling ultimately where we want things to go. And so if world leaders got together and allowed themselves to see a new reality on that day, it would be ideal. But if we could all do it as a field, as many of us as possible, that field consciousness can actually push into the collective in a really beautiful way. And what will happen after that, though, we're going to come into a few dates. The 9th, the 11th, the 12th, these are going to be kind of crunchy days. These are squaring off days. So we get this huge expansion, and then we get this energy that's trying to put us back in the box. No, you can't do that. What makes you think that the current reality can make those changes? And this is the week where the queen is in action. She's got counsel in the form of Saturn, who's like, this is the restriction and these are the current limitations. So one council member is telling her how to be conservative with what she's able to actually get done right now. But then we have this other energy. We have Mars, we have the sun, we have Mercury saying, I believe there's a way. I believe that if we try it this way, we might be able to come up with something different. It might not be fully your idea. It might not be fully your idea. But if we work with the limitation that's already presented, we can actually create a new way. So they could be very crunchy if you're really committed to your side of the equation, but they could be really creative if we allow all of those limitations to actually serve us. So then the next dates that I think that we should really be conscious of, leading up to the full moon on the 21st, there's going to be a couple of squares. There's going to be a Venus square, Neptune on the 16th, another kind of Mercury square on the 17th, and then a Sun square on the 19th. So it's going to be a squaring of what our intuition allows us to see that has no proof on the tangible field. This is when we get those out-of-box solutions. The week before, the Queen Energy week showed us what all the limitations were that we were working with. What happens this week from the 16th to the 22nd? It's giving us out-of-the-box, unformed solutions that we've got to be receptive to in order to receive. And that leads all to the 21st, which essentially is like, we're going to make our plan on the full moon in Capricorn for what we eventually, over the next 6 months, are going to dedicate ourselves to. And then The last little thing that I think is important to note is the 28th and 29th. There's going to be another good, solid ending to an old way that we used to let our wounds limit us. And that's when Saturn goes retrograde. That's when Mercury squares Chiron. And it's the last quarter square. This 28th, 29th is like, we're going to go ahead and move beyond that. And we're going to let that wound go. So those are the dates I really wanted to speak into. I feel like the dates are amazing because they're so specific and they're specific to each year. They're not just general. They're actually really specific to this year.
No, thank you for sharing that. I think it does help because especially if you notice that you're feeling these things, you don't even have to remember what the dates are. Although if you write them down, you can come back and listen to this episode and be like, what was Christina saying? I feel like this. Were these the dates that she was talking about? Oh, it's the 12th of the month. She said this was going to feel a little constricting. This was going to feel a little crunchy, as you put it. This is not going to feel as expansive. It might feel a little bit like we're closing down. It might feel a little bit like we're going back into old ways. And I think that's super helpful, and especially because it gives you a reference point. So thank you for sharing those. Thank you for always sharing all the wisdom here. These episodes, I've said it before, they're not the same without you. So I hope that you keep doing them with me because this is so much more fun with you on board. And I get so much out of these. So thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom with everybody, and for being my partner in the transit episodes every month.
I love being here. It's such an honor to talk about this with you. I love that we get to cross-pollinate and we get to turn this jewel together. It feels so magical to me. It gets me fired up about my work on a whole deeper
that
level.
Makes me so happy. I'm so happy to hear that. And thank you. So thank you for being here. If you guys want to keep in touch with Christina, DM me the word Christina on Instagram. I'm at Nicole Laino Official, and we'll send you all of her links. She is lunation.live on Instagram, so go follow her over there if you do not already. I don't even know what you're doing if you're not following her already. But if you'd like the calendar for this month, DM me the word calendar, and we will send that to you, and you can follow along with us on all of those dates. Thanks for being here. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the episode as always. We hope that we see you in the next episode. And remember, in order to have an unshakable business, you must first become an unshakable human. So thanks for letting us help you become unshakable with human design, everybody. We'll see you next time.
If you love this episode and you're a fan of the show, please show us the love on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to the show, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with other entrepreneurs on their human design journey, join our free Facebook community, Human Design for Entrepreneurs. Go to NicoleLaino.me/podcast links to join the group, book a human design reading with me, or access our free human design resources. We'll see you there.